It was supposed to be a peaceful weekend. My daughter and I had finally carved out time to escape the city and spend a few quiet days at our lake cabin. We'd packed up her things, just clothes, books, and her sketch pad, and arrived with the kind of excitement that only a long overdue break can bring. But as soon as we started unloading the car, trouble pulled up in the form of a woman we've come to know all too well, Karen. Head of the local HOA, I was halfway to the porch, carrying one of my daughter's boxers, when she marched up, arms crossed, phone already in hand. "You can't move people in without HOA approval," she snapped. I calmly explained this was my own daughter, staying at our family cabin for a few days. But she didn't want to hear it. Within minutes, she had the cops on the way, claiming I was violating community rules by bringing in an unauthorized resident. That moment changed everything. I'd followed every HOA rule for years, but this was the last straw. I wasn't just going to let her continue harassing people like this, not me. Not my daughter, not anyone. So I did the one thing she didn't expect. I found a way to turn the tables and take back control of the neighborhood she thought she ruled. But trust me, she didn't go down quietly. What happened next shocked everyone, including the HOA itself. Karen had always been a problem, but most neighbors just put up with her to avoid the headache. She acted like the HOA was her personal kingdom, sending out petty warnings, measuring grass height with a ruler, and filing complaints over wind chimes being too loud. I'd kept my distance, paid my dues, followed the rules. But apparently, none of that mattered the moment she saw me with a couple of boxes and assumed the worst. While we waited for the cops, my daughter stood there confused, clutching her pillow, asking, "Dad, why is she yelling?" That's when I knew this wasn't just about me anymore. Karen had crossed a line, turning what should have been a calm father-daughter weekend into a ridiculous power trip. The officers arrived and, to their credit, were polite. They quickly realized nothing illegal was happening. Still, Karen insisted they document everything for the HOA board. I could see it in her eyes, she wasn't done. This was just her opening move. What she didn't know, though, was that I'd been doing my homework. I'd spent months quietly researching the HOA bylaws, ownership rights, and voting procedures. I'd even spoken to a few neighbors who were just as fed up but didn't think they could do anything about it. Karen thought she was the only one with power in this neighborhood. She had no idea the storm that was coming. And it all started with one signature and a single board meeting no one saw coming. Word spread fast after that weekend. Some neighbors started approaching me quietly, asking what really happened with Karen and the cops. I told them the truth, and that's when things began to shift. Turns out, I wasn't the only one tired of her pushing people around. One family had gotten fined for repainting their porch without permission, even though the color matched the original. Another got a notice just for letting their grandson park in the driveway overnight. I dug deeper into the HOA rules, especially the ones Karen never mentioned in her newsletters. Buried in the bylaws was a little-known clause. If enough homeowners signed a petition, we could call a special meeting to propose changes, including removing board members. All we needed was a simple majority. That's when the real work began. My daughter helped me knock on doors, speak with families, and explain what was going on. Some were hesitant at first. Karen had a reputation for retaliation. But once they saw how calm and fair we were being, support grew. Of course, Karen caught wind of it. She started making surprise inspections, sending letters about unauthorized gatherings, and even followed me one evening, pretending she was checking on safety. It was clear she felt the pressure, but this wasn't just about a bad neighbor anymore. It had become a battle over control, freedom, and respect within our own community. And just when it seemed like momentum was on our side, Karen made a move. That changed everything. The petition was almost complete. Just a few signatures short of the number needed to call the special HOA meeting. People were fired up, but cautious, knowing how far Karen might go to hold on to her control. That's when she struck. One morning, neighbors woke up to warning letters taped to their doors, claiming they were participating in unauthorized political activity. Some of them panicked and pulled their names from the petition. It was a setback, but not the end. I wasn't giving up. I printed out copies of the actual bylaws and started holding small, informal chats at the park and at my cabin. I reassured everyone that what we were doing was completely legally necessary. The mood started to turn again. Folks were tired of being bullied over flower pots, mailbox colors, and holiday lights. Then, just days before the deadline to file the petition, my daughter found a notice stuffed in our mailbox and signed and typed threatening legal action if we didn't cease disrupting the peace. It was clear intimidation, but that only pushed me harder. The night before the big submission, I got a message from a neighbor I barely knew. He said, "You need to see something." We met behind his garage. He handed me a manila folder full of emails and memos, proof that Karen had been bending rules and misusing HOA funds for years. That changed everything. But bringing it to light wouldn't be easy. And the special meeting was just one day away. I barely slept that night. The folder of documents the neighbor gave me was explosive screenshots of emails where Karen approved HOA expenses without board votes, receipts for community improvements that never actually happened, even correspondence where she threatened homeowners into silence. It was everything we needed, and also more dangerous than I realized. By morning, word had spread that something big was coming. Karen must have sensed it too. Right before the special meeting, the HOA group email lit up with an announcement. Karen had called for an emergency vote to dissolve the HOA altogether. Her plan was clear. If she couldn't rule it, she'd burn it to the ground before giving anyone else the chance. People were stunned. For years, Karen preached about the importance of order, community standards, and protecting property values. Now she was ready to end it all just to protect herself. The tension outside the community hall was thick. Neighbors gathered in tight groups, whispering, holding printed copies of the petition, and eyeing Karen, who stood near the entrance with her arms crossed like she still owned the place. But just when I thought things couldn't get messier, a new car pulled up someone no one expected. It was a former board member who had moved out months ago after a bitter dispute with Karen, and she wasn't just back to watch. She had her own folder, and what was inside it made everything I had looked small. The moment that former board member stepped inside the meeting room, the whole place shifted. Her name was Julia, and though most of the newer residents didn't know her, the older ones didn't. They remembered how Karen forced her out. Julia walked straight to the front, holding a folder twice the size of mine, and asked for 5 minutes to speak. The board hesitated, but the crowd demanded it. She opened with a simple sentence: "This HOA has been run under fear, not fairness." Then she dropped the bomb. Her documents included bank statements showing HOA funds being used for personal expenses, meals, spa visits, even furniture for Karen's home. She had voice recordings of board meetings where Karen bullied members into silence and emails where she rewrote voting results before they were shared with the community. The room erupted. Some people gasped. Others stood up in disbelief. Karen's face went pale, and for the first time, she had nothing to say. The emergency vote she had called to dissolve the HOA was shut down immediately. Instead, a new vote was called, one to remove her from the board entirely. It passed overwhelmingly. But just when everyone thought it was over, Julia revealed one last detail. Karen had already filed paperwork to turn her property into a short-term rental business, trying to profit off the community she nearly destroyed. And that's when we realized she might have lost her title, but the fight for peace in the neighborhood had only just begun. After the vote, Karen stormed out of the meeting without a word. She didn't fight it maybe because she knew the evidence against her was too strong. Within a week, she officially stepped down, and the new board was formed, made up of longtime residents who genuinely cared about the community. Julia agreed to serve temporarily to help clean up the mess Karen left behind. The short-term rental plan she tried to push through. Blocked. Turns out she'd filed it under false pretenses, and with her off the board, the new leadership quickly reversed it. For the first time in years, people felt like they had a voice again. Neighbors began reconnecting. Small things like front yard chats and porch lights strung across fences reminded us why we moved here in the first place. As for me and my daughter, we finally got that peaceful weekend at the lake cabin. We grilled by the water, she sketched in the sun, and we laughed without looking over our shoulders. That whole experience, starting with Karen calling the cops over a few moving box, taught me that silence gives power to the wrong people. Standing up, even when it's uncomfortable, is how real change happens. The HOA didn't just change hands, it changed direction. No more fear, no more unfair rules. Just neighbors looking out for each other.